Everyone, Spencer here, and welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. I'm super excited to have you listening in. Today, I've got a guest. His name is Rich Howard, and he owns a couple of different sites, and we're going to dive into exactly what those sites are, how much they're earning, why he built them, and the SEO strategies that are working. But first of all, Rich is a great guy. He just had a newborn baby, just a couple of weeks old. He's going to school, getting a master's degree in theology, and he actually works as a pastor as well. And so building sites is not his full-time thing. He's a busy guy. And so the fact that he took some time out of his busy schedule to come on the Niche Pursuits podcast, I'm super appreciative of. And so I hope that you enjoy this interview. I will just say as a heads up, a couple of spots, the connection isn't great. So hopefully you'll just look past that. You're going to get 98% of the conversation here. Just look past the 2% where there's that minor audio problem. But overall, Rich has owned a site called mealprepify.com for a while. And before that, pfgeeks.com. I'll let him tell you the story of why he went from PFGeeks to then mealprepify. But he was looking on motioninvest.com, which is a business I'm a partner in. It's a brokerage where we sell smaller content sites, usually making under $2,000 a month, sometimes a little bit more. But Rich was just kind of looking at listings, and then he saw one that caught his eye. And it was a kitchen guide, Amazon affiliate related website, and that tied in really well with his existing site, mealprepify.com. And so he thought, you know what, maybe I'll go ahead and buy this site. It's in a related niche, and let's see what happens. And the more he looked into it, the site was making about $500-$600 a month. He realized that he could take the existing content from this best kitchen guides website that he was buying on Motion Invest. He could take all that content and put it on Meal Prepify, which was a site that Google was loving and doing really well. And he might be able to just explode his site. And that's exactly what he did. So we're going to talk about how he took 75 articles from one site, put it on his other site, how well that has grown, and what he did, the technical process behind 301 redirecting. We're going to talk about the content updates that he did. We're going to talk about the link building that he's done and overall SEO strategies, because he is really focused on SEO. He's really not even on Pinterest on his really food related blog, which is can be a big source of traffic. And so he's gone all in on Google traffic. We'll talk about why he's doing that. We're going to talk about what his plans are with Meal Prepify, how much money it's making now. I will just let the cat out of the bag that it's now making about $6,500 a month. And you can hear exactly how much of that is from the site that he bought. It's a huge amount. So it's a great interview. He has great SEO strategies and just a really cool story with a great guy that, he's starting a family, just had his first child a couple of weeks ago. And so I love seeing the success that he's having and his ambitious plans and goals that he has for the future. So with that, here's Rich. Hey, Rich, welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast.
Hey, Spencer, it's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. We connected, I think, originally through the Facebook group. There may have been a post in there just about buying sites and selling sites. And you kind of posted that you had recently bought a site and had some success. And we connected. And so I wanted to jump into that story a little bit. But before we do, can you just give everybody that's listening a little bit of your background, kind of what, at least your online business experience, like how did you get started online?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, through the Facebook group, I got to share kind of a little case study on purchase from a Motion Invest site and how honestly just how well it went. And so that's how we got connected originally. But man, I started out kind of this whole online business thing about 3.5, 4 years ago now. It was kind of summer of 2015, 2016. And I was, honestly, I was in a job that I hated, like a lot of people, kind of how they get their start. They start looking for other ways to make money, other sources of income. I knew I was about to be unemployed for several months, and was job searching. And kind of in that whole time, I think I came across maybe Pat Flynn. Like, I think he was like my gateway drug into the online world of blogging, and started listening to his podcast and a bunch of others, and eventually started a personal finance blog called PF Geeks, Personal Finance Geeks, basically, where I shared a lot about budgeting, saving, investing, ways to save money, really just kind of general personal finance. It wasn't super niched down like a lot of personal finance blogs are today. Financial independence, retire early movement, huge fan of that. And so start off with a finance blog that really was pretty terrible. It never took off, really never got traffic. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was a great way to learn. So I spent 2 years kind of halfway committedly blogging about money, about how to save money. And about 2 years later, I'd had a couple of posts that did well in Google. And they were both related to meal prepping. So I had a post like 50 cheap meal prep recipes. That was the only thing on my site that ranked for about a year on the finance site. And so I kind of had a theory. I did a bunch of keyword research and really figured out that this meal prep niche was a great niche. It had a really, really high volume. And most of food blogging has incredibly high volume. It's an ads play, really. There's not a ton of affiliates, but there are some. But they're also really low difficulty. And so I did a bunch of research and was about to start putting a bunch of meal on my finance site, and then decided that I should really consider just making a whole new site that was dedicated to meal prepping, that was relevant, all about that Google would see, hey, this is the best resource on meal prepping. It's not just one part of a finance blog. And so I started Meal Prepify really in August of 2019, launched it in September.
Okay.
I moved over some of the content from from PF Geeks to Meal Prepify. And now that has become my main site. I really don't blog about money anymore. Maybe someday I'll go back to that. But for now, I'm just loving writing about food. And really, the site didn't do much for about 6 months. I was really building a ton of content. I was trying to build as many links as I could through friends and connections and guest posts and interview series and every tactic that you could. And then really in March of 2020, everyone went home because of COVID. And I guess more people were searching online, and Google finally, I'd hit that 6-month mark for the site, and things just took off. Within basically right at the end of the first year, I was making $1,000 a month. So this is August of 2020. And then 6 months later, I'm making $6,000 a month.
Wow.
The site just took off within the span of about 6 months. And that's in that time I did some other stuff. I merged a site that I bought from Motion Invest into my main site, which was a huge reason for kind of the growth that I saw. But yeah, so here we are, March 2021, and the site is about to make $6,500 this month. I started another site last month that's getting some good traction. I'm starting another site next month that I'm excited about. And so, I mean, a year, 2 years from now, excited to see where this will all be.
Yeah. So congrats on being able to grow Meal Prepify to, 6,000 a month plus, and we're going to dive into some of what you mentioned, kind of how you've got there, but about how much traffic is the site getting nowadays, like this month? So January was a fun month because that's when everyone wants to eat healthy, diet and exercise, and
yeah. So January, the site had over 140,000 just from Google.
Wow, just from Google.
Yeah, and so pretty much 95% of my traffic is organic. That's all I focus on. Someday I might try to do Pinterest. I mean, it is a food niche. It should do well.
Yep.
I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't have an eye for it. And I focus on organic. But right now, the site's getting around 100,000 a month from Google, and it's kind of main. But yeah, so around 150,000 page views or so.
And so, where are you making the money from? Is it all display ads? Is it a mix of like Amazon and display, that sort of thing?
Yeah. It's almost dead even between display ads and affiliate. Maybe a little bit more affiliate. My focus personally has been on building up more info content
Mm-hmm.
and more that the ad play. But the site that I ended up buying, writing that, best 10 Vitamix blenders. To me, that's really boring. I don't like writing it. I don't like finding images and doing check price button. But the site I bought had all that, so I moved it all over. And so, really, almost all my ad revenue comes from that, and then some content that I've done with niche website builders. They've done a lot of affiliate content for me as well, and I know you've recommended them in the past, and
Yep.
I'm a huge fan of their work. So right now it's probably 60-40.
And so how much content total is on the site now?
That's a good question. I would guess there's probably about 300 or so articles, maybe 350. I just put another 40 up last month. And so I'm doing 10 a month right now.
Okay.
So the first year I was doing 4 to 6 articles a month. And it was all going back into content. And I'm still kind of doing the same thing. So I'm producing a lot of content every month, really just trying to reinvest in the site to keep growing it.
Mm-hmm. No, very good. So I want to talk about the site that you bought, why you bought it, that sort of thing, but also just sort of an aside as well. What's your current professional background? I mean, are you doing this full time? Do you have enough income online, or you got, full-time jobs?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this is definitely a very much part-time thing for me, which has been cool. So full-time, I'm actually a pastor. At
Oh,
church.
really?
Yeah,
cool.
Here in Houston. And so I'm a full-time pastor. That's what I love doing. And I'm actually also in grad school. So I'm getting my master's in theology.
Okay.
And so I'm doing 40 to 50 hours a week of work, another 10 to 15 of grad school, and then everything else is going into the site. So yes, I've been doing this. I've been working and doing grad school for about 5 years now. And so honestly, I have no intent to ever do online business full time. I love what I do. I feel a unique calling and passion for what I do day to day. I'm getting a master's degree for it. And so I'm definitely not going to pull the plug now that this is doing well. But for me, it's just a way to supplement kind of my income.
Sure.
To replace my wife's full-time job. We just had a baby like 2 weeks ago, which is wild.
Congrats, by the way.
3 weeks ago now. Thank you. And so we really, this will hopefully replace her income. And then over time, it may just give me the ability to do ministry and without having to take a salary, just to kind of like provide for myself and not be a burden onto the church that I work for. That money could be deployed into missions or giving or other areas. And that's kind of my dream one day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that a lot. I mean, it sounds like you found, what you're sort of calling, you're passionate about, in ministry work. And if you're able to do that, and then, like you said, this is kind of on the side to, really just for financial reasons almost.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's what I love, is like, for me, this is sort of my full-time thing, and a lot of other people, but it doesn't have to be. I know a lot of people that are kind of doing this on the side and have a full-time job that they absolutely love and would never give up.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, it's also forced me to be really strategic in how I spend my time on the site. Because I don't have time to test a bunch of different things, to try every different traffic source or every different strategy.
Right.
I found what works for me. It's content and building links, and I just keep running that game, and it's working.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that you've got a newborn baby in the house, you definitely need to be focused, right?
That's right.
You're not going to have any more time. That's for sure.
Amen to that.
I can speak from experience. I've got 4 kids. They're all beyond the newborn stage at this point. So there's different challenges for sure. But family is important for sure. So,
that's right.
So let's go ahead and jump into buying a site on Motion Invest, right? So first of all, you already had PF Geeks. You started Meal Prepify. Why did you decide to buy another site?
Man, it's a great question. So really about probably like middle of the year 2020, my kind of keyword strategy changed a little bit. Stuff and figuring out, things that I thought I could rank for. But kind of late, or really about August or so, I started to look for sites that were in my niche that had really low authority, but were getting great traffic. And my theory was that if I write an article on the same topic, then my higher authority site would outrank them, assuming that my content is just as good, if not better. And so I started to kind of follow that strategy, and that's still something that I'm doing today. But then I came across Best Kitchen Guides. It was listed on Motion Invest. I've been kind of following a lot of your listings for a while at the time. It was kind of keeping an eye on that, really for future niche ideas that I would start myself, but also some of the kitchen ones that would come up, I would plug them into an SEO tool, see what they're ranking for, use that for keyword ideas. But then this side, I saw a really good opportunity because it had lost so much value because the revenue had dropped really from like $2,500 a month down to $600 a month. And so the revenue had crashed after the May update.
Okay.
My site had taken off after the May update. And so I had some theories on kind of what the May update was targeting. I had read a lot of the stuff out there on what Google was trying to fix. And the site had terrible site speed. It was abysmally just low.
Yeah.
And so my theory was that I was going to flip the site initially. I was going to buy it, fix the site speed, fix the content, replace a lot of the links that were kind of outdated or no longer there, spruce up some of the content, and then just make a quick sale 6 months later and sell it. And then while I was in the kind of the purchase phase, I decided, man, I should really just keep this for myself and integrate it into Meal Prepify, put it on the higher authority site, and see if I can take this from $600 a month back to what it used to be. And so I ended up buying the site. Really, I wasn't planning to, but I straight up took out a loan against one of our retirement accounts, which I don't recommend for most people to do.
Yeah, it's a little risky for sure.
It is. Yeah, I was pretty confident in what I was doing, and we've, like I said, I was part of the fire space for a while, so we had a decent amount to kind of hedge against, and I wasn't too worried about it. And so honestly, it was probably the best financial move I've made to date.
Yeah. And so at the time you said it was making about $600 a month when you bought it, right?
Yeah. I think the last month that they had, it was like 600. My first month with the site, whenever I first bought it, it had gone down to like 500 or so. I'd kept declining. And then I was really starting to just fix it up.
Yeah. And so your theory for buying it is really kind of why I'm interested in doing this interview, because you said, okay, I could buy the site and grow it and then flip it, but no, I've got a related site. I've got Meal Prepify that's related to, the Best Kitchen Guide content that, you're going to be buying. So why don't I take this site that maybe has a penalty or clearly has declined in Google, Google's not liking, let's take that content, put it on a site that Google is loving, right? Yeah. That has had an increase in May, and let's see what happens, right? Yeah, that was kind of the theory. And so walk us through that process. Like, how quickly did you start moving over content, and what was that process like?
One of the best pieces of advice that I got after buying the site, or maybe as well as buying it, was, hey, if Google has devalued all this content, you may want to be careful about moving it over onto your site until you have fixed it up.
Yeah.
And so, because what I wanted to do was bring over, 100 articles that Google was not liking and have Google penalize my whole site because of it. And so I spent about 3 to 4 months leaving the site exactly how it was. I didn't move any content over. So I closed really in September of 2020. And I spent September, October, November really just cleaning up the site. I fixed up some site speed issues. I had a virtual assistant who was updating content. So she updated about 75 articles over the span of those 2 months. It was a huge project. I was paying her about $25 an hour, which is a decent rate.
It's really good. Yeah.
So all in, she probably spent, maybe 20 to 30 hours updating all that content. She was mostly updating it for SEO. And so it wasn't a ton of editing, for grammar and syntax, although honestly, the content still needs it. But it was really, there's headings that were, they didn't have H2s. They would jump straight to H3s that have 2 H1s, all kinds of header issues. there'd be articles that wouldn't have, like the keyword would be mentioned 1 or 2 times. And so really she did like an SEO audit for each article, or an SEO update for each article. And so really as she would update those articles, then I gave it some time. And so the site went from about 6,000 organic hits up to about 10,000, still on Best Kitchen Guides. It had gone from maybe 500 a month in revenue up to about 700. So it was starting to improve again.
And all you had done at that point was what you just explained, updating mostly the SEO on page, headers and minor editing of the content.
It was on page, and then the site was with Ezoic. And I like Ezoic. I think Ezoic is great. I'm with AdThrive now, with Meal Prepify, but for sites under 50,000 sessions, I think Ezoic is the best option. But I really think you have to use their site speed accelerator, which is, it's annoying. It's like $20 a month, but it takes care of a lot of the site speed issues. And so I turned that on the very first day I had access to the site.
Okay.
So that was really the main site speed thing I did. And then, just a bunch of on-page work.
Yeah. And so that's huge. You took it from $600 a month to what did you say? Or like $500 a month to, what was it? Did you say? I'm sorry, after a few months?
Yeah, it's making about 3,000 a month now. So in December, I pulled all the content off of really the top 75 articles is what I pulled over. I kind of went through the content and identified articles that were getting traffic, articles that had lost traffic, and then articles that I thought were most relevant to my site. And so there's some articles that they weren't necessarily, they would fill out kind of the content that I cover on my site. And so I moved over those 75 articles. The other 75 are still on Best Kitchen Guides. I haven't touched them. I might someday, but for now they're just hanging out there. So I moved them all over one by one, 301 redirects, double checking every single one to make sure that they were all set up correctly. And I did all that the first week of December. And then started to kind of pick up. In January, it just rocketed. My traffic on Meal Prepify, really in December, the two sites combined were, November, sorry. The two sites combined were about 45,000 sessions in Google. And then by January, it was up to 140,000.
Wow. That is such a huge jump. That's awesome.
It was wild. It was fun to watch.
So have you been able to track like how well those 75 articles that you moved over are performing versus, your site overall? Like you're able to say, okay, these articles are making me this much every month.
Yeah. So here's what I did initially. Whenever I pulled all the content over, I just made a unique Amazon tracking ID for all that content. And so that I could see, hey, in Amazon, this, all the content I moved over from Best Kitchen Guides has a Best Kitchen Guides tracking ID. So I could see exactly how much revenue those are bringing in. I ended up making some edits last month with kind of conversion rate stuff. And so my VA actually went in and it wasn't a mistake on his part, but he ended up changing everything back to Meal Prepify's tracking ID. And so I actually can't tell that. I could go back in and fix it all, but it's not worth it to me.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that in January, that content brought in, I think 2,000 in revenue.
All right.
In affiliate revenue.
In affiliate revenue, and then there would have been more in display ad revenue.
Correct. Yeah. I had one article that it's actually the most popular article on my site, I think. And it went from 6,000 hits a month up to, or like 4,000 hits a month up to about 20,000 in January.
Wow. And so you said your total site, Meal Prepify, is making, just a little over $6,000 this month, $6,500 this month. Would you say that most of that revenue is now coming from those 75 articles that you moved over?
Yeah, at least half of it.
Wow.
I would guess probably half of the ways to track every post and to do all the work in that.
Yeah.
Knowing that data point isn't worth it to me to do all the effort. But it's probably about half of the revenue if I had to guess.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on the month. So like November and December, they would have done more affiliate revenue because of, Black Friday and Christmas. Whereas January and February, it's probably more weighted towards like the meal prepping content, bringing more of the income. And so but it's kind of nice because different seasons of the year will have different emphases. And so when people are really looking to meal prep and lose weight and eat healthy, all my meal prep content will do well. But during big shopping seasons, the Best Kitchen Guides content will do really well.
Yeah. All right. No, that's good enough. I was just kind of curious. I'm sure listeners, kind of would want to know, like, so you took, essentially bestkitchenguide.com from, $500 a month to now $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
Right. Even though it's now merged into your main site,
right.
That's huge. I mean, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
Did you use any tools to like update your content? Were you using like Surfer SEO or anything like that? Or, to kind of help your VA out?
No, I really wasn't. Thankfully, she knows what she's doing. She has a site of her own, and she's done some SEO kind of content updating for some really big personal finance sites. Mm-hmm. And so I trusted her that she knew what she was doing. The first couple of audits, she would kind of do it, keep it as a draft. I would review it, and then it would get published. And then, but after that, I just kind of let her go to the races. And so, she would use kind of like the Yoast checkbox just to make sure things were kind of checking the boxes. But overall, there's mostly just on-page work that she kind of knew what she was doing. She added a lot of FAQs from Google's, people also ask questions.
Okay.
So added a lot of those, probably at least 300 to 400 words an article were added, just pulling from those ideas.
Okay.
So that was big time for sure.
Yeah. All right. So did a lot of content updates, going through that process that you mentioned. Now the other technical aspect, you did the 301 redirects. Maybe explain that process just a little bit for somebody if they wanted to do something similar.
And moving content around from site to site. If you mess up the redirect, you can lose all your rankings, you can lose all your traffic. It could really not go well. And so I would basically, I did a couple different ways. You could copy and paste all the content from the back end of one website into a new post on the other website, and make sure it's all copied in correctly, formatted correctly. And then I would make sure the titles and keywords are all set up right, and then hit publish on Meal Prepify. And then on Best Kitchen Guides, I had to plug in, I think, 301 redirects. There's a couple of redirection plugins.
Yeah.
I've used a couple different ones. They all work pretty well. And so I would just do a 301 on Best Kitchen Guides, address 1, and then address 2 would be the new article on Meal Prepify. And so you got to make sure you get the URLs exactly how they're meant to be. And then you would just save it. And then I would always test it. So I would then click on the article to Best Kitchen Guides to make sure it went to Meal Prepify.
Yep.
And even though I was meticulous about it, there were still errors that I found a month later. I had to go back in and make sure, okay, this is actually not. And the way I could tell was the articles on Best Kitchen Guides were still getting traffic in January. It's like, oh, that doesn't make sense. I moved that over.
Should have been moved. Right.
That's right. For sure. The tricky part was the owner of Best Kitchen Guides had some tables and some short code kind of stuff. So I had to import like all of his table press tables, which that took some time to make sure that was all formatted correctly. I ended up removing all those because I didn't like them. But for the initial kind of content transfer, that was also one of the more time-consuming parts, was making sure all the tables were set up correctly. So that was definitely part of it. As far as 301 redirects, it's pretty simple. It's basically telling Google that this article now is on this site instead. I would always submit it to Search Console as well immediately, just to submit to index. So that was a big part of it.
So I know you didn't move all the content. How many articles were left on Best Kitchen Guides, and why didn't you move certain articles?
Yeah, so the site had around 150 articles when I bought it, and I really just scraped the top half, the top 50%. So 50 of those were articles that were getting traffic and doing well. Another 20 or so were ones that I thought could do well. They were on page 3 or 4, maybe 5. But relevant enough that I thought I could send some internal links to them, which I actually used Link Whisper for, which was helpful.
Oh, nice. Cool.
And so I used that. and really set up a bunch of internal links. And then the other 75 articles, I just left them. So they're still there. I'm not sure the history of Best Kitchen Guides, but I could definitely tell that it had different site owners in the past. One of which was probably not native English, and so some of the articles, or maybe he was outsourcing to people that weren't native English speaking. So it's kind of like a house, like you different layers of paint from every different owner, and so
Right.
like some of the content was great and had been like newly updated and been fixed up. Other content you could tell hadn't been touched and was never going to do well. Or if it was going to do well, I'd have to pay a VA to basically rewrite the whole article.
Right.
And so a lot of that I did not bring over. I also kind of broke it out into categories. And so this may be helpful to your readers who are ever considering this, but I had a lot of air fryer and Instant Pot and kind of Vitamix content on my site, and Best Kitchen Guides had a lot of that as well. And so if I had like a category like air fryer, I moved over every single air fryer article, even though some of them were not getting traffic and didn't necessarily need to be moved over. But I thought because it was kind of this whole category, I should move all of it over. And so some of those articles that really didn't do much before are actually getting decent traffic now. And then I've been able to really do a lot of internal linking to where I have an article on like using foil in an air fryer that gets a lot of traffic. I can then point that article, and in the very first intro, I referenced hey, here's 40 plus air fryer recipes you could try. And so I've actually seen that kind of the internal linking work both like to help both kind of chunks of content increase in rankings and increase in traffic. And so that my air fryer recipes post really wasn't doing well on my site at all until I had a bunch of air fryer content now linking to it. And then that article now gets 3,000 hits a month from Google. And so
Wow.
Really like the tide rose, for both kind of halves of the website.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, Google kind of sees that, hey, now you are becoming more of a topical authority on air fryers. You've got lots of articles, and they're kind of linking to each other. That's passing some link juice. It makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Why those may have been improved. So was some of the decision to not move certain articles based on like maybe bad links that some of those articles had or anything like that?
Honestly, I probably should have checked that more closely, but I didn't.
Okay.
With Meal Prepify, I've done a really good job building links, and so within the first year, I had like a DA of 30. I'm now like DR 33, I think, with Ahrefs.
Okay.
I have a lot of really good links to that site, and so I wasn't super worried about some bad links coming over. The biggest thing I did was not moving the whole domain. So I have not redirected there. Most of the same links were going to the homepage for most sites. Most of the bad links go to homepages.
Right.
They're in directories or coupon sites or whatever.
Yeah. So let's talk about your link building strategies just a little bit. You mentioned, that you've done quite a bit of link building. So what's been your process for building links? What's your strategies?
Yeah. I mean, as cheesy as it is, honestly, it's probably just relationships with people online. Getting to know bloggers, being part of different kind of Slack groups, Twitter conversations, Facebook groups. I'm in multiple that are kind of niche specific. So I'm in some finance groups, some food blogger groups. I'm also in, I'm in the niche pursuits group and a few others like that. Mm-hmm. And so, I probably talk to like 10 new people a week about blogging and site building and all the above. And so really just kind of making connections, seeing how we can help each other out is a huge part of what I do. I also create a lot of content that is sort of built to get links from other niches. And so like my first article on Meal Prepify was 50 cheap meal prep articles. That's the one I pulled over from PF Geeks. Mm-hmm. And so, I was a finance blogger. So I had a bunch of friends in the finance space that I could say, hey, I have this resource that actually would benefit your readers, not like all those emails that we get on the articles that wouldn't actually help your readers.
Totally unrelated.
But this one actually would help their readers. And so A lot of my friends really just, they helped me out. They linked to that content because they thought it was good. They thought it was helpful. They didn't have content like that on their site, which I think is really key. So I'm not asking, a finance blogger to link to my how to budget article, that they also have a how to budget article, but rather they can link to my best content, my how to meal prep, my 50 cheat meal prep article, recipes. It's not competitive with them. And so they don't mind linking to me to help me out because it's not going to hurt them. I'm not going to outrank them. We're not competing. We're really creating content that is marketed at kind of that shoulder niche kind of stuff. And so, meal prep is good for finance bloggers. It's good for mom bloggers. It's good for productivity and self-improvement, optimize your life kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been able to get a lot of links from other niches. And really that's what I did for the first 100 links that I built, was create content that I could market to other niches that were not competing with me. And so that's really how I built my first 100 links. That's how I got to a DA of 30 in about a year. And then now that I'm established, I'm trying to do more guest posts in the food space. And so,
Right.
because when you have a really low authority and you got 10 articles on the site, most people are not going to let you guest post for them. But when I can say, hey, I've got a DA of 30, I get 100,000 organic a month. I've guest posted on these 4 big sites, and hey, these guest posts are actually ranking in Google, giving those site owners traffic. Would you let me do the same? And I found that people are a lot more receptive to that.
Right.
So that's kind of now what I'm doing, is trying to get better links from bigger sites that are in the food blog space.
Yeah. No, so that makes sense. You got a lot of connections. You've been able to, work with people that are in similar niches as you and be able to get some links. A lot of these connections that you made, it sounded like, you're either in a Facebook group or a Slack group. So is a lot of this connections not happening on like email? You're not really cold outreach. It's more like, hey, I'm going to shoot you a message on Facebook. I see you're doing something cool. Let's connect.
Is my number one piece of advice. It may not number one. I have a lot of number one pieces of advice, but don't do outreach over email. Most people don't like email. Most of the email that they get is trash, and it's not good. It's terrible outreach. And so I think people who get a lot of email outreach, they just kind of write it all off. Even if you get some good pitches here and there, most of it just gets written off and, they just ignore it. And so I think email is a lot less personal. It's coming from, rich@mealprep5.com. Whereas if I'm messaging them from my personal Facebook account, they can see the picture of me and my wife with our, hey, we're expecting a child, picture frame and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
they can click on my profile and see that I'm a pastor, see that I work at a church. They can read some of the stuff I've posted before. Not that most people probably do that, but it's just way more personal.
Yeah.
And so I think also most of my connections are not just me cold DMing someone in a Facebook group, but they're posting right now. It's been a lot of like core web vitals stuff. And so
Right.
I'm in a few Facebook groups where everyone's freaking out about CWV. I've made some really good changes to my site to fix that. And so, I've optimized a bunch of content recently to go from really to past core web vitals. And so I see a lot of bloggers are struggling with that. They're asking, hey, what are you doing? What are the best tips? So I'll comment a couple ideas and I'll say, hey, if you want more help, message me, send me your site. They'll send me their site. I'll give them some tips. And then I'll ask them, hey, in return, would you give me a link to my site here?
Yeah.
And so I've gotten a lot of links. I've gotten a few links that way. But typically it's helping them with whatever their problems are. And then trying to just message them somehow. So I'm not going through the Niche Pursuits Facebook group and just saying, hey, 50 new members, let me go message them all.
Right.
I don't recommend, but yeah, so really it's just kind of getting to know people that way.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I see the same thing, right? We get all the same sort of outreach emails and they end up in junk folder or get deleted a lot. But yeah, when you see a personal message of somebody that maybe commented on a thread or anyways, you notice it, they're a real person. It's a lot easier to connect that way.
Yeah.
Now you did mention that you'd done some other link building, like you had worked with niche website builders. What have you done with those guys?
Well, they've mostly done content for me.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So they've done a lot of, I actually have a new site that I'm working on. I'm not ready to share the name of it yet, but they've helped me with some links to that as well. So they've done some skyscraper stuff for me. With meal prep, with Google, any form of link building at all is a no-no. And so, I've done some stuff that Google probably wouldn't love, but overall, it's not a huge deal. But with the new site, I'm trying some more kind of true outsourced link building stuff. And so I've used niche website builders. I'm actually using One Little Web, who you
Okay.
interviewed the
Yep.
founder about a month ago. I think Sujan is his name.
Yep.
So I'm actually using them.
Okay.
I've used them. I've used links that rank. I've used niche website builders. I'm testing out a Haro service.
Okay.
And so that's all for the new site. And so overall, it's all going really well. I've actually a shout out to One Little Web. They've been the best one that I've used so far.
Oh, really?
In terms of link building. So if you're going to go the paid link building route, I wouldn't do it on sites that you really want to own for forever, because I think it could not go well. But this is more of a, hey, buy, grow, flip it, sell it kind of site that I'm trying. And so I don't mind doing some paid link building. But the biggest risk is that you get bad domains, and getting to pre-approve the domains is, in my opinion, the biggest way to eliminate risk when it comes to buying, to going the paid link building route.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I do like that aspect of One Little Web, being able to kind of see, okay, here's, do you approve of these links before we actually build them? It's kind of a cool thing there. So any other strategies or SEO tips that we didn't discuss that you think were important in growing Meal Prepify, after you kind of merge this content? Any other sort of final tips there in that regard? Yeah,
absolutely. I think really a lot of it is kind of knowing what to focus on at the right time. And so I'll kind of tell a quick story. I'm in a food blog Facebook group, and I kind of posted kind of like I did in Motion Invest. One, this is kind of more of a meta thing. Like, a good way to make connections in Facebook groups is to share your own success, because people will reach out asking a bunch of questions. And so that's an easy way to kind of meet a lot of people quickly. So I did this in a food blog Facebook group that I'm in. I shared how I went from 40,000 hits to 150,000 hits in a couple of months. So I had a bunch, and the big thing I highlighted was link building. And so I had a bunch of people reaching out, asking how to build links, but a lot of them had sites with 10 articles.
Yeah.
And like, you really need to build links. You need to write more content. And so I think for me, it was knowing what to focus on at the right time. I focused on content really for the first 6 months to a year. I was building links along the way for sure, but it was not my main focus. But once I figured, hey, I got 100 articles on the site. Now, if I move my site authority up, all those move up in the rankings. And so my best piece of advice when it comes to that is focusing on the right thing at the right time. With a new site, it's probably content for a long time. It's writing more content, going back and updating your old content, and along the way, trying to build links here and there. That's definitely my advice. The other thing is, more site-wide stuff. So I'm doing a lot of like Google, like EAT now. Mm-hmm. So I updated my about page, a contact page, a team page, really trying to make my site look like a legit business. You interviewed someone about a month ago. I think it might have been Matt Diggity.
Yeah, Matt Diggity. We talked about EAT quite a bit.
Yeah. So that if you haven't listened, if any listener to this podcast hasn't listened to that, they need to go back and listen to it. But it's making your site look like an actual business, like a legitimate site. And so I've really tried to go back kind of work. Now I'm shifting more to site speed. And so I've implemented short pixel kind of image optimization, WP Rocket, making sure all that is good to go. I'm using asset cleanup right now to kind of unload a lot of unused CSS and JavaScript that's weighing down articles on my site. So I've been able to go from like page speed scores of 50 to 60 up to like 95. And it takes me about 3 minutes per post now. And because I figured, hey, I've got a lot of content. Google has said site speed is important. It's going to become more important. I may not pass Core Web Vitals with having a lot of ads on the site, but if I'm faster than the food blogger on page 1 or page 2, then I'm in good shape. Like, And so I've really spent a lot of time on site speed. But man, all that stuff like EAT and speed, like it's important, but really the first year should just be content, for a lot more people than I think really realize that.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people, you're right. They have 10, 20 articles and, you're not going to see huge results until you start getting that 50, 100 articles plus, right? And so if you can focus on that, it's just so important to age that in Google, let it start ranking better, and hopefully start having these big jumps like you did over a 2-3 month period, right? Where, something just takes off, and that can happen once you put in the effort. Sure. So a lot of great tips that you've shared. So what's sort of the plan now with Meal Prepify? Are you going to just hang on to it long term, sell it at some point? What's your thoughts there?
Man, yeah. So I was thinking about that last night at 2 a.m. when I was rocking my newborn.
Oh man,
I was like,
the good old days.
Yeah, that's when all my site strategy sessions are now.
Yeah.
But man, I think so. This is as of last night. My long-term plan is to keep Meal Prepify, keep growing it. And really my goal is to go from 5,000-6,000 a month to 50,000 a month.
Wow.
I want to 10x it. I want to get there. I think it's possible. The food space is, I mean, there are endless opportunities for content ideas, for affiliate ideas. There's tons of sites that are doing insane traffic numbers. I mean, truly, I'm a really, really small fish, even with the success that I've had. So I'm getting 100,000 hits a month from Google. My goal is to get to 1 million in the next couple of years, a month. And so to get there, it's going to be just a lot of content. And so I'm kind of going back to content production. I didn't share this, but whenever I was buying and doing all the best kitchen guide stuff, I wasn't producing any new content just because I was so focused on updating content and merging it all and doing it right. But so then in January, I hit the ground running again with new content. I did like 40 articles with niche website builders. And then now I'm just building out a ton of like roundup content, 30 ground beef ideas, 30 chicken meal prep ideas. So I'm doing 10 articles a month with those. I have a lot of roundups that are ranking already. And so I'm having some recipes kind of created to put on my site that I can link to within my own site. And so I send about 30,000 outbound clicks a month to other recipes. And so trying to keep some of that traffic inside my own site to kind of get RPMs up. But man, really, it's just going to be content. And so I'm doing about 10 to 15 articles a month now. I would love to be doing an article a day here in a few months if I can get the budget to do it. But then all along the way, while I'm growing Meal Prepify, the goal is to take everything I've learned and just buy and flip other sites. And so Meal Prepify long term, that's kind of 10 years maybe. Along the way, buy and sell some sites, that are getting 3,000 a month, 5,000 a month, and just try to get some cash infusions to pay off our house, to travel, to be generous, to give to our church, to help friends. We have all kinds of things we'd love to do with that money. Sure. We're really passionate about adoption. So we have not adopted yet, but we have family and friends who have, and adoption is expensive. And so we'd love to be able to really contribute to a lot of that. One of our kind of big picture goals is to help 100 couples adopt.
Oh, wow.
And so, so if I can buy a site in the water, bath niche and sell it and make 200 grand and, pay off our house and give 20 grand away, like I would love to do that. All the while kind of growing Meal Prepify is the kind of the long-term, project.
Yeah. So I like what you said there. Maybe to just kind of restate, I was going to maybe challenge you a little bit, but I think maybe your model's okay, but let's challenge me. I want to hear it. Let's talk it through. Well, my concern is, are you going to spread yourself too thin, right? Like if you got Meal Prepify that you really want to get to 1 million visitors a month and, to $50,000 a month, why not like go all in on that? But at the same time, I can understand that, hey, if you are just going to be reinvesting everything that you're making into Meal Prepify and, you're snowballing that. And so, down the road, it's this huge thing. Do you still have the time without taking away too much focus to be flipping other sites? And I'm not saying you can't, right? It's just, it requires a team. It requires being very organized and not spreading yourself too thin. Right. So that's the only challenge I would have there.
And so I think there's a good caution there for sure. I think fortunately I'm at the point where I'm outsourcing a lot of what I'm doing.
Yep.
It is fairly full with the systems that I have, the systems I'm putting in place for writers. I'm actually hiring someone to help me really manage all of my content production. And so if anyone listening to this is interested, I'll pay probably $25 an hour to anyone, but someone who will really manage things like keyword research, which I have a pretty specific way that I like to do that. And then writing outlines, giving those to writers, getting graphics made, inputting into WordPress, formatting it all. If I can get all that off my plate, then really it'll free me up big time to then kind of just keep reproducing what I already know how to do. And particularly on the other websites, using some more like paid services like One Little Web to boost authority. I definitely don't have time to link build to 6 different sites, because that is really time consuming. But if I can outsource parts of that to sort of the more like buy and flip projects, then I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
If in 6 months I say no, I will tell you that you were right. And so, yeah.
Hey, and who am I to talk? I've got tons of projects going on right now, and the only reason I brought it up is because, sort of the end of last year, I was thinking, man, I got like 7 or 8 different projects I'm working on. I need to get rid of a few. Right. And so I've sold a couple sites, and done a few other things, but,
good.
As long as you got the right people in place and the right systems in place, like you can absolutely make it happen. And so we'll maybe catch up in 6 months, a year from now, see how things are going.
That's right. Yeah.
For sure.
The goal for me by the end of this year is 10,000 a month. And I think I'll hit that pretty easily with kind of Q3, Q4 ad revenue rates and stuff. But I'd love to be doing 15,000 a month this time next year. And so I'll come back on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. When you hit that $10,000 a month mark, let me know. And we'll get you scheduled on. We'll talk it out again. But so for people that want to get in touch with you or follow along with you, I mean, you kind of made a job offer here. If anybody wants to accept that, how should people, follow along or get in touch with you?
If any listener is not, they should join that, and they can just search for me. They'll find me, and so that's great. You can also email me if you want at rich@mealprepify.com. I'll definitely respond to email, but again, it's less personal, and so would much prefer just Facebook. It's easier. I don't mind it. That's the best way to get in touch. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Rich, so much for coming on the Niche Pursuits podcast. I love the story. It's kind of something different, being able to take a site that you bought and merge the content. You've had huge growth and success there, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you, man. I really enjoyed it. And my last kind of final plug for you would be, hey, if other people have authoritative sites in a niche, look at Motion Invest. If you can find a site that's in your niche, do what I did. I'd love to help out, give advice on how to do that well. And I think Motion Invest is the best marketplace out there. It's the only one I really look at every week. So I'm excited for whoever does that. I would love to see. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Really great hearing your story again. And over at Motion Invest, we're doing our best to try and make a really great marketplace with sites that we've done the due diligence on that are moving in the right direction. And so glad you're able to find some success there. And just all the best. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
You got it, man. Enjoyed it.